The Hall of Unity floated above the dying star of Vornith like a crown of glass and fire, its walls transparent, its ceiling filled with light that shimmered like water. The greatest chamber in all known space, where the most powerful voices of the galaxy came to speak, argue, and decide the fate of trillions, now stood heavy with silence. Thousands of alien delegates filled the spiral seats that rose high along the curved walls, their bodies glowing, breathing, shifting, whispering in strange languages that flickered across the air like static. The sound of nervous energy hummed through the hall, because today's meeting was not ordinary, it was not trade, or law, or border dispute. It was about humanity, and the seat at the center, carved of black stone and silver light, sat empty, untouched, cold. For the first time in history, the humans had refused to come when called. The Speaker of the Council, a tall being of crystal veins and glowing eyes, lifted its arm, its body flickering. Like fire trapped in glass, order, it said, its voice echoing through the hall like a wind through hollow metal. The Council of the Galactic Alliance will now commence the emergency session regarding the Terran refusal to participate in the Accord of Peace. The noise dimmed, the whispers stopped, and every delegate turned to the empty chair. The symbol of humanity's defiance, the speaker paused, its light dimming slightly, a tremor running through its tone. We offered them peace, it said. We forgave their aggression, we allowed their fleets to remain after the Orion War, and yet they do not come. It looked around, the glow of 1,000 alien faces staring back. Do they think themselves above us? One delegate hissed, its scaled skin glinting red. They think they rule the stars. Another spat. They are children of a death world, they understand only violence. Then why are you afraid? Asked a quiet voice from the upper rows. An elder from the Ketheri Confederacy whose body was made of golden smoke, her tone soft but heavy with meaning. Because every empire that called them children has fallen. Silence followed her words, like gravity pressing against every heart. The speaker's body flickered uneasily. They owe us peace, it said, and we will have it. But its words sounded less like conviction and more like prayer. The great doors of the chamber stood closed, tall enough to fit a warship, carved with the emblems of every species in the Alliance. They had been sealed since dawn. The Council had sent a dozen requests to Earth, all unanswered. The speaker gestured toward the communication podium. Activate the Terran channel. It ordered. The engineers obeyed. Light filled the air, forming a glowing sphere above the center. Static buzzed. Symbols appeared, then disappeared. The screen flickered. Nothing. Then suddenly a tone echoed through the hall, deep and calm. Every being froze as the static cleared. The image of a human appeared, standing in the darkness of what looked like a vast metal chamber. His uniform black, the insignia of Earth glinting faintly on his chest, his eyes gray and sharp like cold steel. No name, no title, just presence. The speaker leaned forward, its body flickering brighter. You are late, human, it said sharply. The Council has waited too long. The man didn't blink, didn't flinch, his expression unreadable. I wasn't planning to come at all, he said, his voice low, calm, but filled with something that made the entire hall go still. Every translator paused for a moment before continuing, because there was a tone in his words that carried more power than any threat. We summoned you, said a delegate, slamming its clawed hand against the table. You do not decide when we meet. The man's gray eyes turned toward it, and even across the projection. The creature felt small. You summoned us, the man said quietly. That's what you think? That you hold power over those who saved your worlds. The hall fell quiet again. The speaker's light flickered brighter. The Orion War is over, it said. And your fleets remain too strong. The Accord demands balance. You must stand down, for peace. The man smiled faintly. But it wasn't joy, it was something colder, sharper. Peace, he repeated. You begged for peace after you started the fire, after you let our soldiers die alone, after you voted to abandon Earth's colonies when the enemy burned them. The speaker tried to reply, but the man raised his hand, his tone cutting through the chamber like a blade. You don't want peace, he said. You want control. You want us quiet, small, obedient. The light flickered across his face, his eyes like storms. You asked for peace after you filled the stars with blood. Now live in the smoke you made. He turned without another word, his figure beginning to fade from the projection. Wait, shouted the speaker. You cannot just leave. But the man didn't look back. He simply said, we already did. The screen went dark, silence fell again, heavy and suffocating, and for a long moment, no one dared to speak. Then the great doors of the chamber opened, and every delegate turned as the sound of footsteps echoed through the hall, slow, steady, human. The same man walked into the room in person, not a projection. Every security drone in the hall activated, targeting him. But he ignored them, his boots clicking against the crystal floor, his expression calm as he walked straight to the empty chair at the center, the seat meant for humanity. He stopped in front of it, didn't sit, just stared at it for a long time, and then at the rest of the council. This chair, he said softly, was built so you could feel safe looking down at us, as if a seat makes you superior. He touched the back of the chair gently. We no longer need your table. The speaker's voice broke. Humanity is part of this council by law. The man looked up, eyes burning like cold stars. Then rewrite your laws, he said, because we're done pretending your peace is anything but chains. The chamber shook faintly, lights flickering as if the station itself felt the weight of his words. One alien stood and shouted, "You can't leave. The galaxy needs you." The man's tone didn't rise, but his words struck harder. The galaxy needed us when it was dying, not now when it wants someone to blame for its fear. He turned, walking toward the doors again. The speaker's voice trembled. "Human, you will bring chaos." The man stopped, glanced back over his shoulder. "No," he said quietly, "you already have." Then he walked out. The doors closed behind him with a sound like thunder, sealing the chamber in silence. For a long time, no one moved. The speaker stared at the empty chair, its crystal body dimming. "He can't mean it," it whispered. "They can't abandon the council." But across the galaxy, ships of the Terran Federation were already moving, withdrawing from border stations, closing trade lanes, sealing their communication channels. Within hours, Earth's star systems went dark, unreachable, untraceable. The humans had done what no species in history had dared. They left the galaxy's throne, not with violence, but with silence. The delegates argued, shouted, demanded votes. "We must bring them back," cried one. "We cannot let them go," yelled another. But no one knew how to reach them. Their codes no longer worked. Their diplomats were gone. Even the translation networks used human servers that now returned only one message, glowing in quiet defiance: access denied. Within days, panic spread, trade halted, fleets stumbled, and the truth became impossible to ignore. The galaxy had grown dependent on the very species it called dangerous. On the seventh day, the speaker stood again before the council, its body cracked, its voice weak. "They will come back," it said. "They cannot survive alone." But the Ketheri elder who had spoken earlier shook her head slowly, her golden form flickering softly. "You still don't understand," she said. "They were never the ones who needed us." The speaker's light dimmed further. "Then what will we do?" it asked. "Without them, who will keep the balance?" The elder's answer was quiet but final. "You will learn," she said, "what it means to beg for peace when no one is left to answer." And as the dying star of Vornith flickered outside the glass walls, a faint hum filled the air, the sound of human ships leaving the system, unseen but undeniable, fading into the black. Across the galaxy, every world felt it, the shift, the weight, the cold realization that for the first time in thousands of years, humanity was no longer among them, and the stars suddenly seemed darker than before. The council chamber stayed empty for many rotations after humanity left, dust gathering where their flag once hung. The Hall of Unity felt colder without them, the echo of their final words still trapped in the air. Outside, the dying sun of Vornith flared and dimmed like a heartbeat. Fading away, across the galaxy the news spread faster than light. Earth had walked away, and no one knew where they went. The first reactions were disbelief. Every species expected the humans to return within days, to bargain, to threaten, to demand something in exchange. But nothing came, not a whisper, not a signal, not a single spark of their usual noise. The great networks that carried trade routes, navigation beacons, and communication relays began to fail because half of them ran on Terran code. The engineers tried to fix it, but the systems refused access, returning the same message again and again in human language that no translator could erase. Connection closed by origin. Weeks turned into months. Planets began hoarding supplies. Fleets were stranded. The trade between inner and outer systems collapsed. And the once mighty Senate that had mocked Earth now sat powerless under its own silence. Some worlds celebrated, thinking humanity's absence meant safety. But soon they learned the truth. Pirates returned to the lanes that Terran patrols once guarded, slave empires rose again, and border wars reignited like old wounds bleeding fresh. The Council tried to mediate. But their ships were too few, their influence fading. They sent envoys toward Sol again, golden vessels carrying gifts and apologies. But every envoy vanished beyond the edge of Terran space. their last transmissions ending with a faint static pulse like the sound of a closing door. The speaker grew desperate, calling for another vote to sanction Earth, to send a combined fleet and force them back into compliance. Yet the idea died before it began because no fleet commander wanted to enter the black region once known as the Terran Sphere. Those who had fought beside humans in the Orion War remembered what those words meant. They remembered the screaming engines, the burning light of their weapons, the way human ships never retreated until the stars themselves went dark. One commander said quietly, "If they left, let them stay gone. For if they come back, none of us will survive," and no one argued with him. Meanwhile, across the far edges of the spiral arm, strange signals began to appear, not like normal transmissions but soft repeating tones buried under cosmic noise. They followed no pattern any sensor could read. Every scientist who studied them came back with the same result. "It is not random," one said, "it is emotional." The signals pulsed like a heartbeat, sometimes slow, sometimes fast, as if the void itself were breathing. At first the Council dismissed it as interference from pulsars. But then the tones began forming shapes on quantum receivers, outlines of continents, oceans, planets, maps, and every map pointed to the same coordinates, Sol, the center of human space. Yet no probe could approach it. Every drone sent to investigate vanished, leaving behind an afterimage of blue light across its sensors. The technicians called it the ghost field. And soon every race began to whisper that the humans had built a wall around their home. A barrier made of light and silence. Something that even thought could not cross. The speaker summoned the Council again, its crystal body dim. "We cannot let them isolate," it said. "Without Terran trade our economies are dying." But the Kethri elder only sighed. "Perhaps they wish us to feel what they felt," she said, "to beg for peace and hear no answer." Still the speaker refused to believe it, sending spies, smugglers, anyone willing to risk the black zones. None returned. One ship drifted back months later, empty. The crew missing. The logs corrupted except for one line scratched into a bulkhead by human hands. "We told you." Panic grew. Planets began blaming each other. Some claimed the humans were hiding an army. Others swore they had transcended flesh. The Council scientists debated endlessly. But no answer satisfied the fear, because deep down they all knew, if humanity was preparing something, it would be something the galaxy could not imagine. Trade convoys began to disappear beyond known routes. Then whole colonies fell silent, their lights fading from the star charts. Rescue fleets found only ash and shadows, sensors reading no radiation, no heat, nothing alive, as if life itself had been turned off. The reports spread faster than the Council could suppress them. "It's the Deathworlders," whispered traders in every port. "They're reminding us what silence costs." The speaker denied it publicly, but privately it watched the stars. Each night, waiting for a sign, a message, anything. Yet all it heard was the hum of the dying sun, each pulse weaker than the last. On the outer rim, the pirate King Jair demanded tribute from a mining world that once belonged to Earth. When the miners refused, he laughed and burned their surface with plasma storms. Days later his entire armada vanished. Nothing on sensors, only a brief spike of impossible gravity before the signal died. Nearby ships found a single black fragment drifting among the asteroids, an alloy unknown to any race but one, Terran steel. Smooth and unbreakable, etched with two words, "Still watching." Fear turned to dread. Empires closed their borders, communication networks fractured. The galaxy was becoming smaller, darker, colder. The speaker tried one final attempt to reach them, broadcasting across every channel. "Humanity, the Council seeks forgiveness. We admit our pride, return and speak with us." 4 days there was no response, and then every screen in the Senate chamber flickered at once. The same 3 words appeared across the walls in white light: "Request denied. Goodbye." No one spoke after that. The hall that once glowed with power now felt like a tomb. The delegates left one by one until the speaker sat alone staring at the empty Terran chair. It whispered to itself, "They cannot survive without us." But even it no longer believed that lie. Months passed, and the stars themselves seemed dimmer, as if the universe mourned the absence of its most defiant children. Travelers told stories of seeing massive shapes moving between systems. Silent shadows that left wakes of blue fire behind them, always distant, never near, like ghosts patrolling the edges of creation. One child asked his mother, "Will they ever come back?" And she answered, "Not until we deserve them." The words spread like scripture among those who remembered the old alliances, and slowly, painfully, the galaxy began to understand what it had lost: not conquerors, not saviors, but the only species that ever looked into the endless dark and refused to blink. Humanity had not vanished, they had only stepped beyond reach, leaving behind a silence that screamed louder than any war. And in that silence, the rest of the galaxy finally heard itself for the first time, and it was afraid. The stars above the Orion spur burned faint and distant now. The great trade lanes, once bright with Terran patrol beacons, had turned dark. Whole sectors drifted without guidance. The Council tried to pretend the situation was under control, but everyone knew the truth. The galaxy was collapsing in slow motion. Without humanity's presence, the balance had vanished. Fleets wandered aimless, supply chains failed, and the proud empires that had mocked Earth began to eat themselves from within. On the Council's golden station, the speaker stood before the delegates, its glass body flickering weaker each cycle, the light of the dying sun outside throwing fractured colors across the chamber. "We have to reach them," it said, but its voice lacked strength. "We must restore contact before the rim systems fall apart." No one answered because everyone remembered the last message request denied goodbye, and no one wished to invite the Deathworlders' attention again. Rumors spread faster than trade ships' whispers that humans were building something enormous inside their home system, something that bent light and gravity itself. Spies sent to Sol never returned, even probes built from pure energy lost signal at the edge of the black zone. The scientists called it an anomaly. The soldiers called it a warning, and the common people called it the empty sky, because where there should have been stars there was only darkness. Every telescope that turned toward Earth saw the same thing, a hollow circle of nothing stretching across the heavens, as if a piece of the universe had been carved away. No radiation, no reflection, just absence. The speaker called it optical illusion, but the pilots who came near swore they felt it in their bones. One captain said he heard a sound like a slow heartbeat before his ship's engines died. Another reported seeing shapes moving inside the dark. His log ended with the words, "They're awake." After that, the Senate forbade any travel towards Sol, yet curiosity is older than fear, and smugglers still tried to cross. A convoy of 3 ships vanished in a single flash of blue light. Only one data packet escaped, a blurred image of something vast and geometric floating in the black, a structure larger than a planet glowing with faint rings of fire around its edges. Experts studied the footage for months, unable to define it. Some said it was a weapon, others a city, but the most terrifying theory came from an old human ally, the Kethri Elder, who had once served beside Terran fleets during the Orion War. She watched the footage in silence and then whispered, "It's a gate." When the speaker demanded what kind, she answered, "A doorway not between worlds but between choices," and refused to speak again. The Council mocked her words, yet the rumor spread humanity is building a door, and no one could explain to where. Meanwhile, outside the Senate's control, chaos grew. The Serathi Dominion invaded the Velnari worlds. Ancient grudges reignited. The smaller empires begged for peace, but no one listened. There was no one left to enforce it. The Council's fleets were half-functional, their AI cores corrupted by the same Terran code they once used for navigation, and every attempt to rewrite it failed, each system returning the same message. No authority detected the speaker screamed for engineers to fix it, but they could only watch as ships refused orders like living things obeying some unseen command. One night, the entire western arm of the Senate's defense grid shut down simultaneously. Every planet under its protection left vulnerable, and within hours pirate kings descended, burning cities and seizing slaves. The Senate could only watch powerless, its once mighty network now turned against it. During the chaos, a low frequency pulse spread through the stars. Too faint for ordinary senses, but every creature felt it deep inside their chest, a thump, slow, steady, then another, like the heartbeat of the universe synchronizing again. Worlds reported power surges. Instruments flickered. The Kethri Elder rose in the chamber, her smoky body trembling. "They are speaking," she said. The speaker turned toward her, desperate. "What are they saying?" The Elder's glow dimmed. "They're counting," she whispered. "And when they finish, something will happen." The chamber erupted. In panic. "They're threatening us," shouted one. "They're returning," cried another, but before anyone could act, all communication screens flashed white, then black. The galaxy's entire network reset itself within seconds, then every channel filled with a simple image, the empty sky now alive, swirling with light, the dark circle pulsing like an eye opening in slow motion. At its center, a faint blue sphere appeared. Earth, for the first time in months, visible again, wrapped in shifting rings of light. The speaker fell silent, or mixing with terror. "What is that?" it breathed. An ancient voice answered, not from speakers, but from every wall, every machine, every mind. A voice calm, strong, unmistakably human. "Observation complete," it said. "Phase 1 successful." The light faded, the image vanished, and the networks went dead again. But something had changed. Sensors across hundreds of systems picked up new gravitational distortions, faint traces of movement. As if entire fleets were shifting unseen through hyperspace, every scan pointed away from Sol, outward beyond the rim. "They're leaving," said the aide, trembling. "Leaving the galaxy." The speaker stared into the dying sun. "Why?" it whispered, but there was no answer, only the hum of the machines, all bearing the same invisible signature, Terran code, rewriting itself, turning every network back on, stabilizing power grids, reopening trade channels. Planets once at war suddenly reconnected their defense arrays. Back online, their systems healing without instruction. The council didn't understand it, but the people began to whisper that humanity had fixed the galaxy before walking away again. Some called it mercy, others called it warning. In the night sky of 1,000 worlds, new constellations appeared, faint rings of blue arranged like the mark of an open door, and when telescopes focused on them they realized the shapes were moving outward, leaving trails of fire across the stars. The Terran fleets had not vanished into death, they were departing into something greater. Behind them the space they left glowed briefly like a promise or a threat depending on who watched. The speaker stood alone in the chamber whispering to the void, "What are you doing?" And somewhere across the black a voice that was not heard but felt answered softly, "Showing you what the sky looks like when we stop holding it up." And for the first time in recorded history, every world looked up at the heavens and saw them shake. The galaxy began to eat itself from the inside as the absence of humanity stretched into years. The fragile web of alliances that had held the stars together started to tear apart world by world, system by system. The Galactic Council still pretended to lead, but its commands carried no weight now. The once mighty fleets of the Central Powers fought each other over fuel routes, food shipments, and pride. It started with small skirmishes in the outer colonies over abandoned Terran outposts. The Velnari wanted the human trade stations, the Sci-Fi wanted the resource moons, the Kethri just wanted peace, but peace died the moment the first Terran satellite fell into foreign hands, because inside its silent systems were codes no one could crack. Its black surface smooth as night pulsed once and vaporized the thieves' entire fleet in a single flash, leaving behind a silent warning carved into space: "This belongs to no one." After that, fear replaced ambition. No one dared approach another human ruin. Still, hunger makes fools and fear makes liars. Soon the Serathi accused the Velnari of hiding human weapons. The Velnari accused the Kethri of collaborating, and within weeks the first war of the post-Terran era began. The stars bled again. The speaker watched helplessly from the Senate's tower, its once brilliant body dimmed to a dull gray. Every report that reached its desk carried the same message: systems lost, fleets missing, worlds falling. One after another it tried to summon order to rebuild the trust humanity had held together, but there was no trust left, only the memory of strength that wasn't theirs. Entire economies built on Terran trade collapsed overnight when human tech stopped functioning, and no one knew how to repair it. The council sent out engineers, scientists, thieves, anyone desperate enough to reverse engineer the fragments, but the deeper they dug the stranger things became. Human technology refused to obey alien hands. Some of it melted, some of it simply shut down. One researcher wrote in his dying log, "It's alive and it knows we're not them." Then came the rebellion on the Council. World's colonies, starving for months, rose against their rulers, demanding the return of the humans. The Senate sent fleets to crush them, but those fleets vanished near the ghost lanes between the stars. Survivors reported seeing shadows moving through hyperspace, trails of blue light chasing them in silence, ships that were there and not their, entire squadrons disappearing without sound. The speaker shouted for answers: "Who is attacking us?" But no one could say for certain, only that it was clean, efficient, and merciless. Some said the Deathwelders had returned, others whispered it was their machines left behind guarding the ruins. Either way, fear spread faster than truth across the Kethri homeworlds. Religious cults formed, praying to the humans as gods of silence, while the Serathi built entire temples warning against their return. Both sides claimed righteousness, both sides started wars in their name. The irony was bitter, and perfect humanity had left them exactly what they deserved: chaos in every corner of the galaxy. The same story repeated: empires breaking apart from within, alliances crumbling, and every time someone tried to rebuild, a whisper passed through the networks, an untraceable signal, faint and calm: "You wanted freedom, now learn its price." The speaker sat alone in the Hall of Unity, staring at the empty Terran chair. The same one that once represented hope now stood like a monument to guilt, its smooth surface cold and perfect, untouched by time. This was not the plan, it whispered. They were supposed to need us. But even as it spoke, the walls around it began to hum, old machines coming to life, lights flickering in sequences too complex for alien minds to follow. A technician ran in, gasping, "The human systems in our network are activating. We tried to shut them down, but they won't respond." The speaker turned its dim eyes toward the ceiling. "Are they attacking?" "No," said the aide, trembling, "they're helping." Across thousands of worlds, the human code reactivated, restoring climate systems, stabilizing reactors, restarting hospitals, feeding entire populations automatically, as if the machines still obeyed some unseen hand. For a moment hope returned, planets cheered. They thought maybe the humans had forgiven them, maybe they were returning, but just as quickly as the systems came alive, they went dark again, leaving behind a single line glowing on every terminal: "Remember why we left." That message broke the last thread of pride. The council had left. Riots erupted across the core world, civilians demanding their leaders step down, chanting, "Bring them back, bring them back." But how do you call back gods who no longer wish to hear prayers? Fleets tried to form once more to show strength, but even their own AI cores rejected commands, every ship returning the same response: "Not authorized." The council's power died that day, replaced by factions, each claiming to Speak for peace, yet each drawing blood to prove it. The galaxy divided into 100 shards, some still clinging to Terran order, others trying to erase it entirely. The speaker watched the chaos unfold and for the first time felt something it had never felt before. Shame, we broke them, it said to the empty hall. We begged for peace, but we never meant it. The Kethri elder appeared behind it, her form dimmer than ever. You begged for safety, not peace, she said softly, and they gave you neither. Now you will understand what it costs to lose the ones who held the line between you and the dark. Outside the window, the dying sun of Vornith pulsed weakly, its surface cracking with flares like open wounds. One of the aides whispered, "The star is dying faster than predicted." And the elder looked up. "Everything dies faster without them," she said quietly and walked away, leaving the speaker alone with the empty sky above. The next day, the Senate declared a state of emergency, but no one listened. Their transmissions went unanswered. Fleets refused deployment. Colonies declared independence, and the galaxy's once golden age turned into the era of silence. Everywhere the same phrase appeared, painted on walls, scratched into metal, broadcast in static: "They left us because we made them." And somewhere beyond the rim of known space, 1,000 blue lights flickered for a heartbeat, as if answering not with anger, not with mercy, but with memory. Then the darkness closed again, swallowing the light, leaving the galaxy to its own noise and regret. The galaxy had grown used to silence. The noise of war had faded into background static. The Senate's voice no longer reached the outer worlds. Its orders ignored. Its fleets scattered. Every world now ruled itself, some through strength, others through fear. Yet beneath all that chaos, one truth remained. Every eye still looked toward the place where humanity used to be. Every telescope pointed to the empty sky where the Terran systems had vanished. Months became years. Trade rebuilt itself. Without them, new borders formed, new governments rose, but none lasted long. They all collapsed under their own greed, because without the Deathworlders to balance them, every empire became a mirror of arrogance. The speaker, now old and cracked, watched from the hollow halls of the council station, its once bright body dull like ash. The chamber was half abandoned, dust floating where light once danced. "It is over," whispered one of the remaining aides. "They will never return." The speaker said nothing. It had stopped making predictions after so many failures, yet something inside it refused to accept that humanity was gone. Then one night the stars themselves began to blink, not one or two but hundreds across the sky, dimmed for exactly 8 seconds, and then came back brighter than before. At first astronomers thought it was a natural pulse from the galactic core, but then instruments detected a pattern, a rhythm too precise to be random. 8 seconds dark, 3 seconds light, then repeat across thousands of systems. The pattern continued, the same timing, the same frequency. "It's a code," shouted a scientist in the research center. "Not cosmic, it's engineered." The speaker's heart of glass flickered faintly. "By whom?" it asked, but the answer was already obvious. Only one species in history had ever used time-based transmission across starlight: the humans. Within hours the entire galaxy was awake, every communication array tuned to the same rhythm, decoding the signal piece by piece. And when the message finally appeared, it was simple, 3 words glowing across every screen, every ship, every planet: "We warned you." The words pulsed once and then multiplied, filling every display in endless repetition. "We warned you, we warned you, we warned you." Across the outer worlds, power grids failed, stations went dark, fleets panicked. The speaker shouted, "Find the source, trace it now." But all they found was the signal coming from everywhere and nowhere all at once, as if the stars themselves were speaking. The council declared it an act of terrorism, blaming rogue AI or pirates, but no one believed that. Traders whispered that the humans were speaking again, their silence finally broken. "They're angry," said one captain. "No," replied another, "they're watching." As the panic spread, fleets scrambled to defend borders, yet their ships refused to launch. Every AI core locked simultaneously, their systems freezing with the same human code that powered them centuries ago. Technicians tried to override it, but the screens filled with a single line of text: "Authorization revoked." It was as if the galaxy's own machines had turned away from their masters and bowed to ghosts. The speaker stared at the glowing messages around it, feeling the old dread return. "They've taken control again," it whispered. "No," said the Kethri elder, who still lingered in the shadows. "They never lost it." Across thousands of worlds, the same phenomenon occurred: entire power grids shutting down, factories freezing, defense shields offline. Then suddenly everything rebooted at once, but this time under new code. The systems no longer displayed the emblems of their empires. Instead, a single crest appeared across every world, a circle of blue light surrounding a single word: Terran. No one understood if it was threat or gift, because with that reboot all the machines started working better than before. The reactors stabilized, the crops revived, the weather machines recalibrated, every broken satellite repaired itself. The galaxy thrived again, yet fear grew stronger, because no one knew the price. Fleets that once fought each other stopped mid-battle, their targeting systems disabled, their weapons cold. The warlords screamed orders, but their ships refused to obey. And then a voice came through the static on every channel, every frequency, every planet. It was human, deep and calm. "You begged for peace," it said, "and we gave you silence. You broke it, now you will live by it." Again the speaker fell to its knees, the hall shaking under the resonance of that voice. "This is the council," it cried. "We admit our guilt. We seek forgiveness. Please speak to us." For a long time there was no reply, only static, then the voice returned softer, colder. We do not seek forgiveness, we seek distance. You were warned. When you asked for peace you demanded surrender. Now you will learn the cost of ignorance. And then everything went dark again. No power, no signal, no sound for one full hour. The galaxy was blind. Those 60 minutes became known forever as the hour of stillness. Ships froze in space, planets drifted in black silence, and then without warning everything came back online. No systems damaged, no lives lost, but every device displayed a single sentence: this was mercy. After that no one doubted who ruled the stars. The speaker gathered what remained of the council. They could have destroyed us, it said, trembling. But they chose to remind us instead. The Ketheri elder nodded slowly. That is their way, she said. The quiet is louder than war. Beyond the rim of the galaxy astronomers detected movement, massive objects leaving the Milky Way, each trailing energy strong enough to bend space itself. Some said it was human fleets departing, others claimed it was their machines spreading across the void, but the pattern of their travel was clear. They were expanding, not attacking, not conquering, simply leaving, yet leaving their mark wherever they passed. Systems stabilized, networks realigned, life improved, as if the humans had decided to fix the galaxy one last time before letting it fall to its own choices and then vanish for good. The speaker watched the reports with tears of light falling down its cracked body. They are gone again, it whispered. They return only to remind us what we are not. And somewhere in the black beyond the stars a faint signal echoed one last time before fading. We warned you because we cared. The galaxy never heard from them again, but every night when the stars pulsed faintly blue for exactly 8 seconds the worlds remembered that message and whispered in the dark, they're still watching. The galaxy had never known true silence until that day. The return signal faded, the stars still glowed, but the void between them felt heavier, colder, as if sound itself had died. The council tried to speak to its worlds, but their transmissions echoed back empty words lost inside an endless hum. They called it the Great Silence. It began with one system, then spread like disease to all. Communication relay stations went offline without warning, power grids worked, but no messages passed between them. Even ships orbiting the same planet could not talk to each other. It was not destruction, it was isolation, pure and precise. The speaker stood in the broken hall of unity, staring at the flickering holograms of dead channels. They have cut us off from ourselves, it whispered. The aides around it trembled. Why do this? Why not finish us? The Ketheri elder answered from the shadows. Because this is worse. They want us to feel what they felt when we silenced them. Outside the station's glass walls the dying sun of Vornath pulsed faintly, each flash slower than the last. Scientists said the radiation from the star had changed frequencies, matching the rhythm of human pulse signals. 8 seconds dark, 3 seconds light. It was as if even the star had learned to echo their warning. The council sent fleets to investigate, but no ship ever returned. Those who ventured near the edge of Terran space vanished without trace. The ones who survived described things beyond comprehension, shadows of ships so large they blotted out entire constellations, silent forms drifting just beyond light range, their hulls blacker than space itself. They did not attack, they simply existed, watching, waiting. One captain's last words before his transmission cut off were, "They are listening to the galaxy breathe." After that no one dared to speak their names anymore. Entire cultures banned the word human from language. Old statues were buried, histories rewritten, yet the silence remained, growing deeper, stronger, like an invisible gravity pressing against every mind. People began hearing whispers in the dark, faint echoes of human voices inside dreams, sometimes gentle, sometimes filled with sorrow. One alien miner on the edge of the rim claimed to hear a voice saying, "You wanted peace, now you have it." The council dismissed him as insane until more reports came, the same message spoken in different tongues across dozens of worlds. Soon priests called it divine punishment, philosophers called it balance, but the truth was simpler. The humans had done what no war ever could. They had made the galaxy face itself. Fleets rusted in orbit, their crews too afraid to leave the safety of homeworlds. Trade collapsed again. But this time not from conflict, from stillness. No one wanted to cross the black where Terran space once was. Superstition turned into law. No ships were allowed to pass within 10 sectors of Sol. Those who tried returned, whispering of music faint and endless coming from nowhere. The council assembled again. Though half its seats were empty, the speaker, older than memory, flickered dimly. "We are dying," it said, "not from war, not from famine, but from quiet. We cannot exist like this." The Ketheri elder stood, her smoky form barely holding shape. "Now you understand," she said. "The silence you feared was not weakness, it was power." The speaker turned to her. "Then what do we do? How do we reach them?" She shook her head slowly. "You cannot reach them. They are everywhere and nowhere. Their silence is woven into your own machines, your stars, your voices." In desperation the council tried sending an ancient form of signal, analog radio waves, primitive and weak, something humanity once used in their earliest days, maybe hoping nostalgia would reach them. The transmission carried a simple plea. "We were wrong, we seek understanding." It traveled for months, bouncing through the dark, then disappeared. No reply came until 1 year later, when every radio on every planet turned on by itself, playing a single tone, low, deep, steady and human. Then a voice followed, not from one direction but from all around. "Understanding was always yours to choose," it said. You wanted us gone, so we left. Now learn what it means to speak into a void. The signal ended, but its echo continued to hum beneath every communication frequency. For years every attempt to erase it failed. The engineers called it a parasite, but the philosophers called it memory. Slowly the galaxy-adapted colonies began growing again without help, relying on their own strength, but no one laughed anymore, no one sang. Even the music of their cultures grew slower, softer, filled with pauses where words used to be. It was as if the universe itself had learned to breathe between sentences. The great silence became part of life. Ships named their routes after its stations, honored it with moments of stillness before launch. Every captain whispered a quiet apology before crossing the void where humans once walked. One night a small child on a moon colony looked up at the stars and asked his mother, "Will they ever come back?" She smiled sadly. "They never left," she said. "They're just quiet now." Far beyond her sky something stirred in the dark, a flicker of blue light the size of a world moving slowly between stars, unseen by any sensor and yet felt by every heart. Admiral Reese stood on the bridge of the Erebus, his face calm as the void before him. "Phase 3 complete," said the AI voice. "The great silence holds across the spiral arm." Reese nodded. "And the council?" "Fractured in fear," said the AI. "They are learning at last." Reese looked toward the stars, the reflection of Earth's distant glow flickering in his eyes. "Then let them learn," he said quietly. "Let them rebuild without us, because only then will they understand why we left." He turned away from the window, the ship drifting deeper into the black. Behind him the stars pulsed, once faintly blue for 8 seconds, then vanished. The silence returned, but this time it felt different, not cold, not cruel, simply final. The galaxy would heal in its own way, and humanity would remain unseen, guiding only through absence. The greatest lesson ever taught by the Deathworlders was not war or victory but stillness, and when the last echo of their signal faded the stars whispered one final truth: the quiet belongs to them. The great silence had lasted so long that many believed it would never end. The stars had become monuments to quiet regret. The council existed only in name, its chambers empty, its laws forgotten. The galaxy had turned inward, trying to heal from its own fear. Entire generations were born who had never heard a human voice, only stories and warnings carved into stone. Yet on the night cycle of the dying star Vornith, something changed. It began with a tremor, not on planets but in space itself. A low vibration like a heartbeat felt through hull, metal and bone. Every ship sensor in the quadrant came alive, reading impossible gravitational waves rippling outward from the galactic core worlds. Panic, thinking another supernova had erupted, but the waves were too precise, too rhythmic, too human. Across the old council station, the few surviving delegates gathered around the viewing window, watching the star outside pulse faster than ever, each flare timed perfectly. 8 seconds, dark. 3 seconds. Light. Then again the pattern of the Deathworlders. The speaker's successor, a young being of fractured glass, whispered, "They're coming back." Fear and awe mixing in its tone. Before anyone could respond, the light outside the window bent, as if space itself inhaled and then exhaled, and from that distortion emerged a shadow the size of a continent, black and seamless, moving with the grace of thought itself. A Terran warship older than empires, larger than nations, its hull etched with silent symbols that shimmered blue like living veins around it. Smaller ships appeared in perfect formation, hundreds, thousands, spreading through the system like stars reborn. Every communication device overloaded with static before settling into one channel open to all frequencies across the galaxy. The voice that followed was unmistakably human, low, calm, certain. "This is not war," it said, "this is memory." Across the spiral arm people froze in place, farmers, soldiers, pirates, priests, all staring at the sky as faint blue lights filled their heavens. Each light a human ship positioning with impossible accuracy, forming circles, rings, patterns around suns, every system touched by their geometry. The galaxy's night turned to blue dawn. The ships did not fire, they did not threaten, they simply existed, each one humming the same tone that resonated deep in every living heart. Some wept, some prayed, others screamed, but no one dared to move. On the ruined council station, the speaker's successor turned to the old Ketheri elder, who still lived though her form was dim smoke. "Why have they returned?" it asked. The elder's eyes glowed faint gold. "Because the lesson is finished," she said, "and now they will see what we became." Before anyone could question her, the sky tore open again, revealing something larger than ships, a construct beyond comprehension, surrounding the system like a halo of light. It wasn't metal or energy, it was both alive and infinite. The old humans had built something outside understanding, a structure connecting the fleets, a lattice of time and gravity that made the sun tremble. "They're moving the star," shouted a scientist, but the elder only smiled sadly. "They are tuning it," she whispered, "the way they tuned the galaxy to their silence." And indeed the star's light changed, turning from gold to pale blue until the entire system glowed with Terran hue. Then the human voice returned, deeper, now echoing through every mind. "You have lived without us, you have learned fear without war and peace. Without trust, now remember why we left." And the ships aligned one final time, their formation shifting into an image visible from every world across the spiral arm, a simple symbol, a circle surrounding a small bright point, the mark of Earth, the mark of origin. The voice continued. "We asked for peace, you turned it to power. We offered silence, you filled it with noise. Now we take nothing, we demand nothing. We simply remind you that even when unseen we hold the sky together." At that moment the Gravitational waves spiked every star across the Milky Way, pulsed simultaneously, billions of suns blinking in unison. The galaxy itself trembled. Some thought it would end, collapse under the weight of its own resonance, but the waves steadied, becoming music, deep harmonic tones vibrating through matter itself, the sound of a million engines purring like the heartbeat of creation. And then, just as suddenly as it began, it stopped, leaving behind perfect stillness. Again, the speaker's successor collapsed to its knees, the glass of its body cracking. They changed the stars, it gasped. The Ketheri elder placed a trembling hand upon the floor. No, she said. They reminded the stars who made them shine. The human fleets began to fade, each ship dissolving into light, returning to the void, leaving only the great construct that ringed the dying sun of Vorneth. It shimmered, once then folded into itself, and was gone. Sensors detected no trace of mass, only a residual energy pattern that spread outward through space. A wave of stability systems, long unstable, suddenly aligned, decaying orbits corrected, power grids synchronized. The entire galaxy pulsed in harmony like a living thing, healed in one breath. It was as if humanity had adjusted the entire cosmos to balance again. The act was beyond technology, beyond even divinity. It was purpose made real, and when it was done, the final human voice spoke across the stars. We will not return again, for this was not punishment, this was farewell. Remember that peace is not the absence of war, but the presence of understanding. When you speak again, make sure it is worth hearing. And then the transmission ended, leaving every world bathed in faint blue light. For one long silent hour, people looked up, and for the first time since the age of humans, no one spoke. They simply listened to the quiet, realizing it was not empty, but full of memory, of will, of meaning. The day would forever be known as the day the stars trembled, the moment the galaxy understood that power was never about weapons or fleets, but about the choice to hold still when everything else demanded noise. Far beyond the rim, where the Milky Way's light faded, Admiral Reese stood aboard the Erebus, watching the galaxy glow. One last time. It's done, said the AI voice. Reese nodded slowly. They will remember, he said softly. They have to. His gaze drifted to the endless dark beyond. And now, he murmured, we move where silence still waits to be born. Engines hummed quietly as the Terran fleets turned outward, heading for the space between galaxies, into the unknown, the blue light behind them fading to silver. And when the last ship vanished, even the stars seemed to exhale, as if relieved to have seen gods walk among them one final time before returning to legend. When the light faded, the galaxy stood still. Entire worlds stopped breathing. Ships hung in space, unmoving. Suns burned softly in new colors shaped by human hands. The moment after the trembling ended stretched into eternity. No one knew what to do, no one dared to speak. The council that once ruled thousands of races had no words left, only the sound of their own hearts beating against the silence. The speaker's successor stood alone in the Hall of Unity, surrounded by shattered glass and empty chairs. Where once the proud voices of empires had echoed, now only dust and faint blue light drifted through the air. It looked up at the ceiling, where the image of Earth's mark still glowed faintly, a circle of blue surrounding a small white spark. They are gone, it whispered, its voice small against the vastness. They have left us forever. The Ketheri elder, who had witnessed every age, approached her, form now dim as smoke. No, child, she said softly. They do not leave, they never truly leave. The successor turned toward her, confused. Then what is this? What have they done? The elder's voice trembled. They have given us back the galaxy. And outside, through the glass walls, the stars pulsed once in slow rhythm, not fear, not pain, just balanced life returning to harmony. Every orbit stable, every field aligned. It was as if the universe itself had been tuned to a forgotten song. Every machine built on human code hummed faintly, not under command, but in agreement, synchronizing with something vast, unseen. Yet everywhere across the spiral arm, new constellations appeared, blue rings forming shapes like open doors, gates pointing outward toward the void beyond the edge of known space. And when telescopes focused on them, they saw light trails moving away, thousands of faint streaks stretching into darkness. Humanity's fleets departing, not retreating, not escaping, but expanding beyond the Milky Way itself, leaving behind a galaxy healed and haunted by their memory. The council called it the ascension, others called it the departure, but among ordinary people it became legend. The day the gods walked away, entire civilizations rewrote their calendars around it. The first day of the new age, the age of echoes, for humanity had not destroyed the galaxy, they had become its echo, a resonance that would never fade. Every system now carried faint Terran signatures in its light waves. Every communication carried traces of their tone, as if the universe itself had learned to speak with their rhythm. One night, the speaker's successor received a report from a deep space observatory on the edge of the galactic rim. The message was simple, a video of a black void flickering faintly with blue light forming patterns that repeated in ancient Terran code. The translation took days. When it finished, the words filled every screen in the Senate chamber. To those who remain, we are not gods, we are not conquerors, we are the memory of choice. You feared silence because you thought it meant weakness. We used silence because it means understanding. We gave you the galaxy not as inheritance but as test. The stars are yours now, but they listen, and so do we. Speak wisely, build gently, remember that every echo has a source, and that source still watches you. The message ended and the chamber filled With soft light that made the walls hum gently as if alive, the successor whispered, "They see us," and somewhere far beyond the edge of the galaxy the last of the Terran ships drifted into the dark. The Erebus leading the fleet through the endless void. Admiral Reese stood on its bridge silent as the stars behind him. The AI spoke. The message was received. All systems report alignment across the spiral arm. Reese nodded slowly. Then it is done. He looked toward the horizon where a faint swirl of another galaxy shimmered faintly billions of light years away. "They will follow someday," he said, "when they are ready." "And us?" asked the AI. Reese smiled faintly. "We go forward. Silence waits beyond creation, and we will teach it to listen." The Erebus engines glowed bright blue once more, their light bending around space as the fleet vanished into the dark, leaving behind nothing but starlight and stories on every world. People looked up at the night sky and saw the faint blue shimmer that crossed the heavens, moving slowly, and when it passed their hearts beat in rhythm with it. The same 8-second pulse that had once terrified them now comforted them. Every child born after that day grew up knowing that humanity was not gone, just waiting, their names no longer spoken with fear but with reverence. The architects of peace, the keepers of silence on the planet Velna. A poet stood beneath the new constellations and spoke aloud the final verse that would echo across the galaxy for generations. They left not in anger but in understanding. They gave us silence not as punishment but as gift, and in that silence we finally heard ourselves. The poem spread faster than light, translated into 1,000 tongues, repeated by millions across the stars, and when the words reached the old council station, the last surviving elder stood on the balcony staring into the endless dark, whispering the same phrase again and again. "They left us to find them." The galaxies turned, the centuries passed, but the blue pulse of Terran light still rippled through space. Every 100 years a new flare appeared from the edge of the void, a reminder that the Deathworlders still moved somewhere beyond imagination, charting new stars, shaping new silence, guiding creation itself, and deep within the memory of every world lay their final message. Peace is not the absence of sound, it is the mastery of when to speak. And so the galaxy continued, no longer afraid of silence, but holding it sacred, knowing that somewhere beyond time humanity still listened, still waited, still watched as the stars trembled softly in their eternal rhythm.